pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Tonight we may have a little bit of a longer meeting because we have a joint meeting with the Finance Committee. Before I ask the Finance Committee to open their meeting, I am going to take public comment in. So public comment for the Select Board is to receive oral communications from members of the public. Members of the public may address the Select Board for up to 3 minutes. Longer with the permission of the Chair. The Select Board shall not engage in discussion on topics raised during public comment, but may choose to add the topic to a future agenda. This agenda segment will be limited to 15 minutes unless extended at the discretion of the Chair. Do we have any public comment tonight? Hi, Steve, come on up.
Thank you.
State your name and your address, please.
I'm Steve Manchin on 14th Street, and this morning, or maybe it was early afternoon, I sent a message to the Select Board and to Erica, Chair of the FinCom, voicing what some may think was a little bit premature complaint, if you will, about tonight's meeting. Given that the draft warrant was going to be on the agenda, I thought it would have been useful if the paperwork had been posted on the website so that other people that are interested, me and others perhaps, could read it and perhaps give some public comment tonight, like I'm doing right now, that'd be on point to some of the articles that were being up for discussion. I understand there may be some ins and outs and timings about what can be posted on the agenda, and without knowing, I'm sympathetic to that, but I think it would be really useful for the future. The draft warrant could be available to the public ahead of time. I think
Thank you.
when things get delayed and, once you take control of the warrant and come up with some ideas, it can be late for the public to weigh in, so that effectively, much as what happens at the federal level, one body, the House or the Senate, comes up and say, take this or leave it, we're gonna jam it down your throat. And it sounds extreme for what I'm talking about with the Select Board, but I think more time for meaningful public input would be useful. And by meaningful, I mean more time is the key. So with that, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I am going to respond to that. It is, the agenda is on, the reviewing the town meeting warrant is on our agenda. The town of Newbury, we don't post draft documents. The agenda is the warrant is a draft warrant. And honestly, it was continuously being updated up until, I believe, today. It was still worked on today. It was being finalized. That's why the Select Board, even though we received this in our packets, the one we have tonight before us that was given to us tonight is different than the one that we received. And
It'll be updated.
tonight, after we vote the warrant, we're going to have a discussion tonight.
Right.
As
Will
a
we vote
board.
the warrant, or will we continue discussion because it came out a little bit later than, most people?
It didn't come out later. This has been our process historically. This is always our process. We have always had a joint meeting between the Select Board and the Finance Committee. And I'm going to actually ask Erica has a timeline of how we've done this in the past with the Finance Committee. I'm a little confused when you say public comment or public input for the warrant. The role of the Select Board
Thank you.
is to pull together a warrant for annual town meeting. We work with the town administration and we pull together a warrant. We have a joint meeting, it's a draft warrant. We have a joint meeting with the Finance Committee. If there are any bylaw changes, which there are, those have come up from the Planning Board, which has a public hearing for any changes, so there already has been time for the public to comment on any bylaw changes. The Finance Committee takes the warrant goes back at a later meeting, and in a couple of weeks, Erica will have a timeline. And they go through the financial pieces of it, line by line, and they vote to recommend or not recommend to town meeting, annual town meeting. And I believe the finance committee, the chair of the finance committee puts adequate time for public comment on their agenda. They have separate, and I'll let her speak to that in a second. Then we go to, when we do attend town meeting, annual town meeting on April 29th, town meeting, as a town meeting member, if you're a registered voter in the town of Newbury, you are a town meeting member, and that's our legislative body, and it's at that time that we have conversations with the whole of the town meeting members over the warrant, and then the town votes on that. So that's been our process, it's always been our process, that hasn't changed. There is no provision, I don't believe there's a provision in the law to allow for a public hearing on the warrant. I don't believe that's appropriate. I don't believe it's appropriate based on the role of the select board. But actually, I'm gonna pass it over to the chair of the finance committee that will speak to their process.
Yes, thank you, Steve, for sending the note earlier today and for coming to discuss this tonight. After doing so, I did send back a communication to you, BCCing the members of my committee, the finance committee, and this is the meeting where we share the draft. We get it in a hard copy here. We hear about it from town administrator and we listen. The finance committee will not make any votes tonight. We do not vote to accept a warrant. We do not, that's not our job. We do make recommendations on whether or not to recommend, not recommend, or members of our committee can abstain from any of the financial articles on the warrant as we vote those. That meeting will happen for FY26. That meeting will be held next Tuesday night. We will do a detailed ATM warrant review with extended public comment. What we did, same exact process as we did last year. What we do is we then group the warrant articles by like either funding source or topic area and allow for public comment on each of those. So not just one session at the beginning. I will note when we held that similar meeting last year that was on April 2nd last year. No members of the public were present and no public comments were made. So we did that. Also, again, we will also have, after that, vote to recommend, not recommend, we will have a meeting where we will go through the drafting of the finance committee's appropriation booklet, which is what everybody receives at town meeting and is posted on the website well in advance of town meeting, where we have a cover letter as well as rationales for every financial article and talk about our recommendations. That last year happened on the 16th of April, and again, no members of the public. Again, we did extended comment opportunities, that was in the agenda, no members of the public were in attendance for that. We will do that again this year, that will probably be on April 8th. And then we will probably hold one more meeting because we will also at that time also talk about what we were going to present at town meeting. Last year we did an information session about free cash. We will take public comment up until then on what people want to learn about at town meeting and what would help them be prepared voters. We will have a prep session for that probably on April 22nd, about a week before actual town meeting. So that follows exactly the same as we did last year, and in that case, we believe that we have opened up, especially on the finance committee side, we have made room and space for ample public comment on the financial articles, as well as anything received via email is discussed during the following meeting.
May I say something briefly?
Yeah, come on up.
No, I agree that there's a very good process in place for subsequent input from the public, should they choose or have the time to make the comment. But I was thinking of how, once a steamroller starts going downhill, it's difficult to change it. And I was thinking of, let's say there was something that's on the draft warrant right now, I'm saying, gee, I'm thinking to myself now, gee, don't talk about this, and I think you should. I'd have liked to have made that comment for the whole, both committees to hear, as opposed to doing it next week with a FinCon. Or for that matter, if there's something that's there that I think shouldn't be there, I'm speaking for myself again, to say, gee, consider taking this out, and here's why. With budgets tight as they usually are, let's say I had a $10,000 item in my mind that I'd like to see you have addressed. Well, if the money isn't there in the totality of the budget, it doesn't get a chance to get in because we'll blow past our, the money that we have available. So I thought the opportunity for that, the 15 minutes of public comment at a meeting like this would be an opportunity for people to raise specific on-point comments to aid you in your deliberations. Now I'll follow up next week, I guess, and look for what there is to do.
Yes.
And I appreciate your indulgence letting me speak a second time.
No, I thank you, Steve, and you have a valid question, and there's a lot of confusion out there in the public, and I'm more than happy to clarify the process, because I think there's a question on the process.
And also remember, this is a warrant. The actual articles that get voted at town meeting are what is said at town meeting. They can change, the dollar amounts can change between now and town meeting, and if you remember, one of the bylaws at least actually got moved no action. It was on the warrant, but it never went to a vote. So if this is the warning to the residents of what will be before them at town meeting, but it's town meeting where the back and forth typically happens.
And
As
So
by design.
what you're saying is, just for clarification for the voting public, these are all suggestions with educated,
No, they are, we can't talk about anything at town meeting that isn't in the draft warrant. Nobody can add anything. You all as the select board, as members of the select board for multiple years.
we'll get up and give our recommendations.
No. You all tonight, you review this. It's your body that votes the warrant. You're not saying you recommend or not recommend anything. You're saying you want these articles to be posted to warn the inhabitants of the town that these items will be before them at town meeting.
this is the business of
This is-
town meeting.
Right. This is
Okay.
setting the agenda of town meeting. This is the vehicle by which it is done.
This is
And-
not a decision-making process that we're going through at this moment in time. We're just going to make a presentation at town meeting.
Leslie, this is something that we've done like for the past 4 years, since you guys have been on the board. This is how our government works. The select board meets, we set the warrant gets posted, so the public can be warned about this is the business coming before town meeting. The articles, as written, have motions to them, and the administration gets information as time goes by that may change dollar amounts, like school budgets, or an estimate might come in, or something like that, and then when we move, the select board moves at town meeting, that number may actually be different than what's posted in the warrant, because it's a fluid document, it's constantly changing. So I hope that answers your question. This,
Helps.
okay. Any other questions from the board? The Finance Committee, any questions from the Finance Committee? No. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, so,
We have a question.
Jim, public comment. Okay, so 3 minutes.
Jim Moran, Elm Street. I agree in principle with what you just said. What I don't understand is the school every year in November, December, January, February prints after their meetings where they are on their budget.
Mhm.
With the understanding it's draft because it continues to change, as this one will, and it could right up to the floor of the meeting. And then they vote on whatever number you. I think what's struggling with is why isn't this information on draft basis made public today to anybody, And that's maybe one of the reasons that many people don't show up to the meeting, because there's nothing to sit in their hand to talk about the $12 million town budget. Is there something, and when will the budget be available on the draft basis?
So the budget that we're gonna vote on is not 12 million, it's 24 million. That's this year's operating budget, I believe. And that is going to be whatever, but whenever the numbers, as the numbers come in, the number we vote on town meeting floor will be the number that the town uses for our budget. That's, town meeting votes the budget. They're our legislative body.
The question being, when will a copy of the draft, tonight's discussion, be made public?
The draft document would be, the draft warrant can be made public after our meeting, but it's not gonna be what you'll see at town meeting.
I understand
Okay.
that clearly.
So we don't, the town's policy is not to release draft documents because they can be confusing to the public.
A good example is what the school does, and they're 2 and 3 months ahead of the town. The town could follow their lead, and their $50 million school total budget is there in great detail. A good example to follow, just a suggestion, hope we
Thank
can
you.
improve in the future.
Thank you. Okay. Any other public comment? No. Okay. So tonight, everybody have the warrant that you received?
So you want me to read?
Oh, that's right, sorry, Erica was gonna open
So
your
I would
meeting.
entertain a motion to open the finance committee meeting.
Second.
Let's start in roll call vote with Jeff.
Yes, aye.
Patrick, yes. Eric Jacobson, yes.
Yes.
Jean Case.
Yes.
Joe Ali, yes.
Yes.
Frank
Richard
Piscotti,
Keys.
yes.
Yes.
All right, so we got 6 of 6 here opening the meeting. All right.
Thank you. Actually, I'm gonna hand this over to the town administrator now so that she can walk us through the warrant. Please make sure the select board uses the one that was provided to you tonight.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
did you want to start with the planning board presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm gonna move over to, if you look here on article in your packet,
Page,
is, page 5, article 16 is the bylaw changes. The planning board is here. They have a presentation for us. Jeff, can you see the presentation? Can you see the?
I'm gonna share it with them in 1 minute.
Okay. The finance committee doesn't opine on bylaw changes, but I think it's important that they hear it anyways. Finish it what? Page 9? Okay.
The planning board's bylaw articles start at Article 21.
Okay, Article 21 starts on page 9. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Woody.
Hi, Woody.
Say who you are.
My name's Woody Knight, and I'm the chair of the planning board in the town of Newbury. Everyone here's been working hard, Martha, Kristen, and Daniel, for what we have for you tonight. Primary responsibility of the planning board is to continuously review the Newbury zoning bylaw for improvements and amendments to town meeting to meet the needs of town. This process has been going on for a while. Everybody, like I said, everyone's been working hard. The
Joy,
support,
I'm sorry, could you switch the slides? How do you want us to cue you?
That's fine.
Thanks. Thank you.
that's who's on the planning board today. And the planning staff at the bottom. Wonderful pictures of us all. So, with the support of Regional Planning Commission and other consultants, and with legal guidance, planning staff support the planning board to respond to requirements due to changes in the laws, track needs over time, research best zoning practices, and as needed, take a deep dive into updates and edits. And just kind of a timeline, it's the next slide now that we're on to, Joe, thank you. And that's our timeline, where we've been at here. It started with planning board public meetings to review and discuss proposed zoning amendments, 12-4-24, 12-18-24, 1-8-25, and 1-22-25. The planning board vote to refer zoning amendments to the select board was on 1-22-25. Select board review and vote to refer zoning amendments back to the planning board for public hearing happened on 1/28. Public hearing and planning board vote to submit final amendments to the select board was 2/19/25 and 2/26/25. And tonight, here we are, select board and FinCom review and approve articles for inclusion in the town meeting warrant for March 2025. Reasons for this year's proposed amendments to the Newbury zoning bylaw is revisions. Revisions are required to comply with new or updated state and federal laws and recent case law. Examples are FEMA, EPA, marijuana regulations, Mass Affordable Homes Act, and Wall Street decision. Revisions are proposed as part of an overall and ongoing zoning bylaw review called a zoning recodification. The proposed recodification will update outdated or inconsistent terms and definitions and provide housekeeping changes such as formatting, etc. And also to clarify sections of the bylaw to support an improved process for both applicants and permitting boards. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Woody.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
You need a pen? It's pretty, isn't it pretty? Yes.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you for my first town meeting in this position. Planning Director Kristen Brooks, and just want to echo Woody's comments that this has for sure been a team process. You'll see tonight and you'll see at town meeting, there's a lot of content in here and it takes a real dedicated focus to really dive into this stuff. It's an ongoing effort, it's an annual effort, but some of what we're presenting this year has been developed specifically thanks to our former planning director, Martha Taylor, who has supported the planning board through these processes for more than 16 years. So having that expertise has really highlighted, and experience has highlighted places where things are confusing or places where legal cases have changed and so the bylaw language needs to change. So we're kind of categorizing that as this recodification, but it's really a result of really living and breathing this bylaw stuff for a long time. I know some of the select board members are previous planning board members. So I just want to give a shout out to past planning board members who've worked on the zoning bylaw, current planning board members who've worked on the zoning bylaw. It's really a lot of work for our community. And we'll try to go through, we're gonna go through each of these articles. There are actually 8 different articles tonight. Some of them have multiple sections. So I have one slide for each article. I'll present it and then answer any questions. If there's, any detail we wanna dive into, I might turn around and say, hey Martha, come on up here with me. But we've really, as Woody just outlined in that calendar, we've had a lot of meetings working on this stuff, in addition to all the other work that the planning board does. So again, kudos to the volunteers in this town who run this stuff. It's a lot of work. Thank you. Okay, next slide. So there it is. It's a lot. I'm not even gonna read those. Those will be on the warrant. Those are in your packet. Next slide, please. Some of the article numbers on this slide may not be correct because we've been moving the order around a little bit up to the end of today. But the important thing is to emphasize that 3 of the 8 articles are required that the town of Newbury address for reasons outside of our local control. So the first one is a change to the flood hazard section of the bylaw. That's required because FEMA has, we'll dive into that, but FEMA has updated the flood maps for the Merrimack Valley watershed. So due to changes in the flood maps, we have to adopt the new flood maps and update sections of our bylaw. So that's required by FEMA. The second one listed there is site plan review. That's a very customary permitting process for the planning board. A lot of projects come through a review by the planning board when sites are being developed. There are just a couple minor changes there that are being required by EPA to address a pre-construction conference related to stormwater management. So that's a federal stormwater requirement to update one section of site plan review. The third may be one that is on everyone's radar. The Affordable Homes Act was new legislation passed by the state of Massachusetts in August, and it requires towns to update the section of their bylaw that looks at accessory apartments. Unlike some towns, we've had an accessory apartment bylaw on the books for a number of years, which is fantastic. So we're ahead of the curve from what the state's asking, but there are some modifications to our bylaw that need to happen in order to be compliant with the new state law. So again, 3 of the 8 are sort of driven by these external forces. The other 5, next slide please, are sort of what I was starting to talk about earlier, which are their changes to different sections, language, definitions, changes that have needed clarification that we've learned, the planning board has learned about through the processes. So we'll go through each of those. Those are the ones that have a lot more words and sections related to them, so they're a little more complicated. But again, the purpose is to clarify, clean up, make things consistent, and just general sort of give it a review and an update. Next slide. And I just want to say that word recodification is, the reason it's called that is because our zoning bylaw is also called the Code of the Town of Newbury. So that's something I was telling my husband last night.
Is he listening?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hopefully he's not watching. Okay, Article 21 is a really basic administrative update, and it's changing things like the current bylaw spells the word bylaw B-Y-L-A-W. It's just inconsistent throughout the bylaw. We're just gonna go through the whole thing and update that. In many places, it still says Board of Selectmen. We're gonna update that, Select Board. And then the creation of a table of contents is, again, intended to be a tool so that if anyone's looking at this, massive bylaw document, you can find things more easily. That's Article 21. Any questions about that? Pretty straightforward. Okay, thanks. Article 22. All right, this is the first section. So the little s means section. The zoning bylaw is section 97. So that's what you'll see on each slide, the section number of each component of the bylaw. So 97-1 sets forth the general provisions of the bylaw. What is this bylaw? What is the purpose of it? What is the authority based on, and how is it intended to be a tool for the town to use as we review development and growth in the community. So there are several sections that are being updated. There's some new language that's been proposed. This, my understanding is, really comes through a recognition that that some sections of our bylaw are just out of date. So we're sort of trying to bring in the new provisions. This has been reviewed and provided by town council. Working with many communities, she's able to see what other bylaws, what other kinds of language bylaws have, so. If there are any specific questions about any of the changes, I'm happy to try to do my best.
Okay, I'm gonna just stop you there for 1 second. The select board, does anybody have any questions so far? Okay, continue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Next slide, Article 23 in the packet tonight, is the update to the flood hazard section of the bylaw. So again, just to reiterate, the revised maps have, FEMA's taken several years to update the Merrimack watershed revised maps. So any community that includes land area in that geography is being required to update their maps. It's, I think, important to state these mapping changes did not look at coastal flood areas. It's just what's called riverine, so just the freshwater river areas of the community. Those are the only places where there are updates.
I have a question, quick, just,
Sure.
how many communities are involved into the watershed that, basically we are sharing? That all these maps are being formulated from?
I don't know the answer to that. It's, the Merrimack watershed comes through most of the Merrimack Valley, so I'm pretty sure every town, but I can't tell you the exact number.
So these are FEMA maps, right?
These are FEMA maps.
So
yeah,
they're coming from the federal government,
correct.
right, okay. Does that
Yeah.
answer your question?
So they
Yeah, it's-
contracted to look at each local community.
But they will all be combined into one another to make these maps, correct? Or no?
I mean, you can zoom in to any parcel level in the FEMA maps. Like and there are maps that exist, this is just an update. So I don't know if that's answering your question, but it's any community in any town, you can go and put in your address and see if your property is in the floodplain. So that's how it exists now. I think FEMA just updates segments, they hire a contractor to look at this geography or this geography, and they do it on a watershed basis. So
Okay.
I don't know when did the Mystic River watershed get updated? I can't tell you that, but it's been, I think, since, thanks to my slide, they were last mapped in 2014, this part of Newbury. So it's been a while. So maybe every 10 or so years they try to take a look on the ground
By-
and update.
By the decade or so.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you.
Yep, so there's this is a long bylaw, there's a lot of detail. It's been very thoroughly reviewed, both by our town council as well as the Department of Conservation and Recreation. The state has a whole floodplain administration program intended at the state level to help local communities. Their floodplain project manager has reviewed the bylaw a number of times to make sure that the changes are consistent with what FEMA is requiring. The important thing about this, well, two things. One is the maps become effective in July. There is a viewer linked on the planning board's page right now. The DCR is also working with FEMA to hold some open houses, and I'll make sure those dates get put on the website and news blasts and that kind of thing. If people have specific questions about a specific change, there'll be opportunities for public input and to ask those questions. So I'm happy to help provide information if anyone does have specific questions, though there will also be public meetings to allow that to happen. The second bullet is significant to Newbury, which is in order for Newbury residents to be eligible and able to remain in the National Flood Insurance Program, we have to make these updates. So again, that's something really important to our community. I guess that's all that's said there. We all know flooding and insurance are important.
The flood insurance is managed by the federal government, so the federal government's coming in and gonna tell us how they want their floodplains to go. Okay,
Pretty much.
Before we can even ask the question.
well, if you wanna ask a question, DCR is having open mic night.
There have been drafts of the maps for about 18 months, by the way. And they have been presented to the town, so there have been occasions, there has been a lot of communication about this effort, but it's important to bring it to this town meeting because they go into effect July 8th, and we don't want anyone to lose their ability to continue to be enrolled in that insurance program.
Kristen, does any of this have to do with I know it's FEMA, but I mean, is it considered into the realm of climate control? As they're updating the flooding maps throughout.
I think it's been a regular process for the federal government for forever. I don't know how long the flood insurance program has been. A long time. Yeah. There isn't anything new about this particular date and time. It's an iterative updating process.
Yeah.
That helps.
Before we move on, can you ask Jeff, do you have any questions about the flood? Okay, thank you. Okay,
Okay.
Where is he?
he's participating remotely.
Here we see, he's in the sky.
He's in the computer.
Listen, he's over here.
I have Jean over here, but it's usually Jeff, so I'm a little bit confused, so.
Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
On this portion that we're on right now, if we didn't do anything, the flood plan maps and the flood insurance program would remain the same through the federal government, correct?
No.
No, yeah.
Well, they would have to,
Look at
because we need to
California right
abide
now.
by
It's
those
not.
laws.
The federal approved maps would remain the same, but the eligibility of Newbury residents to apply for the flood insurance program would be eliminated.
Why?
Because private insurance companies can go their own route.
Always,
Always.
always.
But this is FEMA insurance.
This is a federal flood insurance program and it's
Right, so why do we need to include it in our bylaws if it's a federal flood program law already?
I mean, honestly, my answer is they're telling us we have to adopt these at a local level. In Massachusetts, if we had county government, it would be different. If we didn't have municipal government at the town meeting level, it might be different, but in this case, they're telling every community.
So, okay, I think you answered my question.
Yeah.
So if we don't change our bylaws to conform to the federal law, then seriously, we're not eligible for flood insurance anymore?
That is
Correct.
yes, correct.
Yeah.
For this particular program.
Okay.
Which, I mean, California is, like, right now, the primary, that state has lost a lot of insurance because they didn't comply with how FEMA was doing it.
Yeah, it's
And the Carolinas might be next in line, so.
Well, not Newbury. Newbury's gonna adopt the bylaw at town meeting.
Yes, we are.
Okay,
Cause we've learned our lesson.
The next one is about section 97-5 of the bylaw, which relates to special permits. So a special permit, I think the select board certainly knows, most people know, is a permit that is discretionary. There's a review process related to approving a special permit or denying a special permit. So the bylaw has multiple sections that relate to special permits. And this first one, which I think is Article 24, still in your packet, is intended to
21.
provide some guidance to the permitting boards and to the applicant about procedure and the authority that a select board or planning board or zoning board has to act as what's called the special permit granting authority. And it gives this criteria, which is a chunk of the section, is sort of naming the categories of issues or topics that the permitting authority, the special permit granting authority, can use to grant the special permit. So this is like a general overview of the entire special permit section. Again, this, I'm sure other board members or Martha can tell stories, but without this in the bylaw, there's been some cases where special permits have been a challenge. So this is intended, again, both for the applicant who's applying and requesting a permit and the permitting authorities to guide them in the categories of things that can be considered.
So it provides clarity to that zoning. I see mentioned here in number 4, under special permits general, that there's a table of use. Has that been updated? So on page 21, number 4.
Sure. Oh, okay.
It says special permits for, the Board of Appeals shall act as a special permit granting authority hereinafter for all special permits unless otherwise designated herein or in the table of use.
Do you want to get to that? I mean, I think I can. Go ahead. Okay. Tell me about
I cannot believe I just heard that word come out of your mouth. No.
The table, at the beginning of the whole bylaw, there's a table of
Yep.
use regulations, and it identifies what kinds of uses are to be considered by which board.
Right.
So in many cases, it'll say, the select board, you got this one, the planning board, you got this one, ZBA. This is a sort of catch-all. If there are places in the bylaw that it's not specified, then the zoning board is the special permit granting authority.
And the special permit has to be applied for and approved before it can go in front of any of the boards, right?
Not approved, it has to be applied for.
Applied for.
Yeah. A request for a special permit is,
And it has to be voted on for the boards to take action on it, I guess you could say.
So has the table of use been updated or is it the same?
So if I can address that
Yes.
question. As Kristen noted earlier, we're going through the recodification process. And we decided to move forward with certain changes to the zoning bylaw this year that were needed to address certain things that we've been having issues with. The next step, we will continue going through the recodification process, and one of the next things we will be doing is going through the table of use regulations to make sure that it really, makes sense and look at the special permit granting authority that's been assigned to each use. So that's not updated now, but will be in the next round.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other questions from the board? Does Jeff have any questions? Thank you. Okay.
I can't help it.
okay, letter C of this 97-5 section is that the next slide? Sorry, yes. Yep, thanks.
The open space?
Yep, so this is a way, someone who's applying for a permit to subdivide a property can use this section of the bylaw. It's called an open space residential development. It's different than a regular development or a standard subdivision. There's some different categories of ways you can propose to develop your property. There is a change that's been required by a case law decision that said communities cannot require an applicant to use this bylaw. So we previously had the word shall. If you were submitting a subdivision of 4 or more lots or units, you were required to present a plan using this open space residential subdivision. That was in this Wall Street development versus Westwood Planning Board, was determined to not be appropriate for a town to require that. So you may make it available to an applicant. There are a lot of benefits. You can incentivize open space residential developments, but you can't require that the applicant. So this is a change from shall to may. So you may choose to submit a subdivision using the OSRD, but it's not required. With that change, we realized that the rest of the sentence was you may use the OSRD to submit this only for 4 lots or more, and that was deemed like we could have an open space subdivision of 3 lots. So the other change here is a response to the first change, saying that any subdivision of land or development that will create 3 or more units may use this section of the bylaw. An open space subdivision is a cluster subdivision where you put your lots or units on a smaller lot and you protect more open space. So it is something that in many cases is a great way to, do a subdivision. We want to make sure that we allow it to be used if the applicant would like to use it.
So previously, the town of Newbury only allowed this for 4 or more parcels, and we're changing it to 3 or more
I think
parcels.
it's actually more than 4,
Okay, more than
Yeah,
4,
more
now
than
it's
4.
moving to 3
3 or more.
or more,
Right.
okay. What else coming at us?
Do you need a drink of water?
Probably, yeah. Thank you. Okay, next slide, please, Troy. I lost my mouse, I'm sorry. That's okay.
Just, if I may, this is all under Article 24. We're still on Article 24, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
That's a long one.
Are you gonna have to get up at the ATM and
I don't know.
chit chat about all of this?
Probably. This is my trial run. Okay, common driveways is another, section of the bylaw within this special permit section. So if you want to use a common driveway instead of single driveways, you have to get a special permit. That is intended for there to be a review process to make sure that what you're doing is, safe, for public safety. There are often comments that the board receives from the police chief or fire chief to make sure the construction of a common driveway, one driveway for more than one properties is safe. So,
If I could ask a question on this, because it falls into my own, where I live. But the beginning of my driveway is a common driveway. It's been for 25 years or more. Are those grandfathered in that, in the bylaws, that it will, they'll maintain the same status that they did originally?
yes, no one will need to come in to get any permission for one that already exists. This is if a new common driveway is proposed within a new application.
Or if they're changing it, like, bittersweet.
Correct. If someone, so the project that actually came through the planning board recently was, there was a driveway for 2 lots and they were adding a 3rd lot. And the planning board had to review that, the driveway already existed, but the addition of the new lot triggered a special permit. The reason we're adding this, so the language that's being added, I think it's page 29 of the packet you all have, is the planning board may waive compliance with components of this section of the common driveway if it deems the waiver is consistent with the purpose and intent of the driveway and it's in the public interest and does not impact public safety, and if written record is kept of such waivers. So what happened with this recent project was the driveway already existed. The current requirements require certain width. There were some really big trees. It was deemed, like it's been being used for 2 properties. The fire department reviewed it. In order for the applicant to not increase the width just a little bit more, which would have required some changes to the site, they had to actually go to the zoning board of appeals to request that waiver. The ZBA had to request the waiver, then they had to come back to the planning board. It was an exceedingly onerous process for this applicant. They did it, we all helped them with that process, but it seemed appropriate in this case where the planning board is the permit granting authority to give the planning board the authority to consider that waiver request, rather than having to go back to the other board.
And thank you very much for the explanation on how that's all gonna work, because it, throughout the community, there are shared driveways and people will have a question about, where they stand as far as like even their deeded property is concerned.
Correct, yeah.
Kristen,
Yep.
the planning board had 2 public hearings, correct?
Yes.
Did anyone ask that?
One hearing that was continued for 2 nights.
Right, for 2 nights. Ample opportunity for the public to weigh in and ask questions like Leslie's asking. Did common driveway come up at all?
It did not.
The planning meeting that I attended, the hearing, was attended by 3 people.
I couldn't get in.
I was one of the 3
Zoom.
people. Dave Powell was the other. The 3rd person did not speak, did not ask questions, did not speak covers correctly, okay? I'm all in favor of public hearings and communicating with the public. And, we can talk about the warrant and the draft and people looking at them between now and annual town meeting. But the track record for people getting involved with public hearings is not too robust.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to marijuana.
Why are you jumping on board for that one, Aldous?
Because we gotta
topic.
move. It's 8:00. Finance committee's getting a nice education.
Okay, this is a lot of pages and, sorry, Tracy. We couldn't figure out any way to make it shorter. What is happening here is one section is being deleted and combined with the next. That's basically what's happening here.
Yeah, so-
It's housekeeping in order to have our bylaws catch up with state regulations.
Okay, so that's what this whole thing is about, it's a cleanup. Can you give me the high level, what's being removed and what's, it looks to me, from reading it, like, marijuana establishment, they're just changing that language, they're removing the dispensaries, medical, and they're gonna call it one thing now?
Do you wanna answer that?
So basically, back in 2016, when the town adopted the marijuana establishments bylaw.
Yeah.
We already had the medical marijuana
Yeah.
establishments bylaw in place. We didn't do anything with that one at the time, but because we have the marijuana establishments bylaw in place, it's really redundant. So there are some provisions in the registered marijuana dispensaries that are being carried over, so just the references to marijuana treatment centers being carried over to the marijuana establishments bylaw.
But nothing substantive is gonna change with this, right?
Nothing substantive.
Okay.
Because we don't have any viable locations in the town of Newbury.
Yeah, I mean, there are locations, there are buffer zones that are established and that kind of things, but there's nothing that prohibits somebody from, coming in and submitting an application.
Right.
in an application.
Thank you.
We've had inquiries, but we haven't had any applications.
The interesting thing that's going on right now are some of the original establishments that opened up and were doing, unbelievable business and bringing prosperity to their community are closing down because there's too much competition.
Okay.
Okay, what's
Look
the
at
next
this.
You can have it.
Okay,
It's so pretty.
this is another sort of similar to the common driveway article. This is cleaning up to address a discrepancy that was found through a project that was being permitted. It's updating this section about customary home occupations to say that no use that requires a special permit under that table of use regulations that we were talking about earlier can be permitted as a customary home occupation.
This is a new article, correct? This is 25.
This is 25.
Would you just tell us when you go from one article to the next, what the
This is-
number is?
Yep. This is,
Oh, it's at the top, I didn't even
It's-
see it.
yeah, it's hidden.
Sorry, I didn't see it up
that's
there.
okay, no worries, yeah, I'll read it out loud, I'm sure there are other people who can't see that. Yeah, Article 25, this is a section that already exists, it's just making an edit to it as that number 2, that's bold italic. So again, it's adding a new subsection which says that no use which requires a special permit under the table of use regulations shall be permitted as a customary home occupation.
Okay.
So essentially, customary home occupations, for the most part, don't require a special permit. But if they do require a special permit for the particular use,
Doesn't it depend
That's
on what the home occupation is?
yes,
So
Exactly.
so
if it's an occupation,
if
in
you
that
couldn't
table.
do, let's say, you would have to fall into the realm of agricultural or within the building itself, but it would have to stay out of like without a special permit, like a retail establishment.
yeah, there are distinctions between what kind of use it is, yes.
And all this is saying is that if the use requires a special permit, it cannot be permitted as a customary home occupation. You have to go through that. Okay, thank you.
Articles 26 is the accessory apartment update. So again, the state passed a large Affordable Homes Act last August, passed in August. It had a variety of components. One of the components is this provision that actually went into effect on February 2nd. So currently, what the Affordable Homes Act says is that any location where a single family home is allowed in your zoning now is allowed to also construct an accessory dwelling unit on the property. So Newbury is nearly entirely single-family homes are allowed, not everywhere, but a majority of the community allows single-family dwellings. Now, those properties are allowed by right to construct an accessory dwelling unit, which is a small dwelling unit. There's parameters around what it is. It's 900 square feet or less.
And it has to be attached to the original building,
It does not.
not anymore.
Correct.
Okay,
That's one of
that
the
was
primary
originally how it
changes.
was set up.
No, we allowed detached, sorry, we allowed detached as well. So the
Yeah.
law does.
Okay. So there doesn't have to be like a common area anymore.
Both attached and detached are allowed.
Okay,
now. Yes, without a special permit if it meets certain criteria. So, as you all know, important things in Newbury include septic, has to meet your septic, utilities, water, there are certain, to actually build an ADU, there are a lot of things a homeowner would have to look into. But again, this is intended to address the housing crisis in the state, and certainly something that was pointed out by the housing production plan that this town just approved, that we need a diversity of housing types. Smaller units are good, they can be in-law units, they can be your 20-something, trying to encourage the growth of that kind of housing is what this is doing. I think I have a second slide.
So is this all new? A new bylaw, there's no change to this?
We're replacing the town's current bylaw with a whole new one, correct?
So do we have to vote to repeal the original? Because I don't want conflicting bylaws, we have a big problem with that.
The way the start of the article is written is getting permission for both, so, to see if the town will vote to amend Article 10, Section 9710D, accessory apartments, by omitting it in its entirety and replacing it as follows.
Okay,
Yep.
great, thank you.
Out with the old, in with the new, updated. I do think this is catching us up to what went into, became law February 2nd. I think our building commissioner has received several inquiries about this. I think that's great. I think this is a real tool for the community. I think we're probably gonna kind of see how it goes for a year, and there may be something coming back next town meeting to address, is this working? There's some, there's regulations that the state has provided, but there is some flexibility in terms of what can be an accessory dwelling unit by special permit on top of what's allowed by right. So I think this will be a housing conversation that I welcome everyone to,
And I think
participate
that it's encouraging for the community to understand the fact that we don't have to build new developments, that we can use what we already have and be a little bit more diverse in that area to keep people in the community.
correct, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Kristen, question?
Yeah.
What was on February 2nd, what was that called that was passed?
The Affordable Homes Act.
Affordable Homes Act?
That was the legislation that was approved by the state last August. It had funding in it, it had bylaw stuff in it, in this component of it for accessory dwelling units went into effect February 2nd.
Does this mimic that precisely, what the Affordable Homes Act, or have we modified what the Affordable Homes Act says to create this?
Yeah, what we're proposing is pretty straight with what's required. As I was sort of alluding to, there are some things that we thought might require more discussion that are options, and we wanted more time for that. So this has been reviewed by, Merrimack Valley Planning Commission staff, by town council to make sure that it's exactly what's required. There's some interesting things that come up, like if you have a 2-family house on one lot, how many ADUs do you get? So when you start actually diving into this, and it's certainly something the planning board, the zoning board has been the permit granting authority, so they're really important to have conversations with as this gets, again, I think it'll be interesting to see how many we construct. And the state is requiring annual reporting, because they also wanna know if this is working, if this is helping address some of our housing concerns.
Will the people that have, say, an existing outbuilding on their property that originally wasn't allowed to
Be occupied.
be occupied?
Yeah.
So that they
Conversions
can convert it
could be
in.
allowed as well. Again, you have to make sure 900 square feet and, all the rest
I'm
of
just
it.
looking into the future for a lot of
Absolutely.
people saying, you know what, I can, I'll be able to afford to live here and mom and dad can, be on the property as well.
Absolutely. I mean, conversion and, reconstruction are big, garage units. I think that's why we put this graphic in, because it really identifies their lots. You could put one on top of your garage, you could convert your garage, you could have one in your basement. There are different ways that an accessory dwelling unit can be built.
Can you have a freestanding building and convert it into, a living space for something, some
Yes.
people, versus just using it for, workspace or something of that nature?
Or a barn.
There you go.
Yes, there's still a review process. The building commissioner is the entity that reviews accessory
That'll
dwelling
open a lot of
units.
doors for people, though.
All right, does this
You know,
board have
bring
any,
people into the town.
have any further questions about ADUs right now?
One more,
Yeah.
quick one. Does this, if someone builds one of these, would it fulfill any of our requirements for like, and I don't know what the terms are, but like 40B or MBTA or any of, like the zoning overlay that we have already? If something like this was built within one of those zones, required zones, would it give us credit for that as a town?
No. Well, let me answer your question two ways. Yeah, I appreciate the question, because there's a lot of things kind of overlapping, with housing these days, but, we're already compliant, so Newbury doesn't have to worry about, like, if this would help us or not.
The MBTA portion, right? Is that that's what you're talking about?
Yes, for that
Yeah.
multifamily housing that was approved at last year's town meeting.
Right.
These accessory dwelling units are not required to be affordable. Like, they're not required to have a deed restriction that requires that you can rent it, by the way, there's no prohibition on that. But it doesn't require you to rent it at any affordable rate. Could be a really expensive, lovely 900 square foot apartment. So it won't count on what's called our subsidized housing inventory necessarily. A property owner could choose to put a deed restriction on it. That means that for perpetuity, it would be rented at an affordable rate. And then they could apply to have it counted. So it could, but there's no requirement if that.
That
Yeah.
answers my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Article 27.
Yeah, I actually have a fact sheet, I'll just pass these around, because there are some details around this.
Is this the ADUs?
This is just for the ADUs,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so Article 27, that's site
Okay.
plan review, right?
Article 27, site plan review,
Page.
so
42.
Thank you.
in addition to projects that require special permit, there are some projects that require what's called a site plan review. That's a process in front of a board where the applicant comes in and says, this is what I wanna do. It's allowed, the use is allowed by right, but the town has identified certain ways that the special permit granting authority can condition the project to assure that, essentially, that the project that's being built, meets public safety, it meets concerns of abutters. Again, it's an approval sort of by right, but there are ways to condition the approval. So the changes here are two. One is the one I mentioned briefly earlier, the EPA, what's called the MS4, the Massachusetts Municipal Separate Stormwater System permit, which is an EPA permit that we already comply with. There's just a very small provision that we didn't have in our bylaw that says you have to have a pre-construction meeting to review the project. So that's a very minor addition, but it has been identified in our, by the town's stormwater consultant as required. The other change comes through, again, sort of the experience of the planning board over the years in reviewing site plan projects. There are a couple additions to the criteria that the board can use in reviewing them. One relates to light pollution, as you can see in our little graphic there. There's been a lot of changes to lighting over the years, and there are really good ways where you can just make sure that the
It's all
lighting
down.
provides enough safety for the project, but it goes down instead of up into the sky. So that's one new provision, and then the other is, again, just something we all know, but our water supply in town is limited. We're interested in being energy efficient and helping, projects be as resource efficient as possible. So we're adding a phrase to again, these are the site plan review criteria.
So I have a question on this one.
Yep.
On Article B, utilizing energy, water, and resource efficient design to the greatest degree possible, including appropriate building orientation, landscape design, use of solar or other energy collection apparatuses, electric vehicle charging stations, LED light fixtures, and use of resource efficient materials and energy water efficient systems. Does this require the applicant to use all of these things? Like, are they required to put in an electric vehicle charging station? Because that's extremely cost prohibitive.
Right, I think, no. So the answer is no. These are sort of a category of site design that the board can have a conversation with the applicant about. And similar to lighting or landscape planting, the applicant proposes what they want, knowing that this is something the town's interested in, but then there's a dialogue to sort of negotiate essentially on what is appropriate for that site. There's certainly not gonna be every site plan that can access solar on their rooftop, or that's a cost I can't do right now. Those kinds of discussions.
Right, my concern is this gonna increase the cost of construction significantly.
They're not requirements,
Okay,
yeah.
they're not requirements.
I will say there are some requirements currently in the building code. You have to, there's EV ready, you're gonna have to call them Pierre Burnett for that one, but I
Yeah.
think that, for instance, like your garage has to be, the electricity utility setup in your garage has to be
Meter code.
appropriate to
Should you
use
wanna
an
have,
EV charging
yes.
station if the owner wanted to do that. So there are already a lot of energy efficiency stuff in the building code, is the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, but this isn't required, this doesn't require the applicant to do that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from the board?
No, that was a good question, by the way.
Thank you.
And I just wanna, it seems pretty ambiguous, actually, when it comes to the actual request from the person that wants to build this thing, when it says designed to the greatest degree possible. It's like, how do you measure that? How do you measure that you're doing it to the greatest degree possible? And who has that discretion? when it comes to me coming to you and asking, this is what I wanna do, here's my package. And you look back at me and you go, well, Dana, you're not doing that to the maxest degree possible.
Those kinds of, I agree, it's not straightforward, those kind of discussions happen currently with.
I know.
So, maybe, well,
Yeah, no, as long as it's
it's
not,
not
as long as it's a dialogue and it's not a, you must do this.
correct.
Jeff, do you have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
There are requirements that, you know, as far as landscaping and, excuse me, you know, building materials and things like that, that go on through the planning board that have to be recognized and applied for and passed.
Yeah, in site plan review, there are conditions that a board can include in the permit. That have requirements really.
I have to tell you,
Yeah.
I miss the planning board because it was so, there was so much to learn.
So is that the only changes to site plan review? Is just these two things here?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes. Yep.
so what's Article 28?
Okay, the last one, the longest one.
Best for last.
Section 11 is sort of at the tail end of the zoning bylaw. It's the place the code kind of wraps everything up. So there are a lot of definitions in this section that are being updated. There is language around the authority to enforce this bylaw. There's language around the granting of building permits. This has been also a highly reviewed section and reviewed by town council, reviewed with Martha's support to bring some of the places where things have been confusing in past projects, ambiguous. Again, to your point, Dana, some of this, that we're really trying to clarify things to the extent possible. Some of the definitions, the planning board did a lot of work on this. We also invited some of the zoning board members, because some of this stuff really comes up more regularly with zoning board permits. Architectural definitions, we looked to our resident architect. But there's been a lot of review, but there are a lot of changes, so happy to answer any.
Did this go through the public hearing process too? All these changes?
It did.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Can you give me just the very high level, what does it change? It just, is it
A lot of definitions,
the definitions? I saw that in the back, yeah.
and then this, just the beginning section, which identifies the authority to enforce.
With the building commissioner,
Correct.
okay. Okay, is there any substantive changes to it from the other one, the way that it was before?
No, from the public hearing version, is that what you mean?
No, the changes that are proposed that have gone through the public hearing process as compared to what is currently on our books, are there substantive changes to that?
No.
One thing, you'll say that there's a whole section on special permit that was
Yeah.
crossed out, and that language was moved to the
Special permit section.
article, the special permit thing, because it made much more sense to have it there in that language. It's simplified, and what we had in Article 11 was outdated.
Okay,
So otherwise, the definitions, like there are several definitions for multifamily housing that were added or moved and reworded to make it consistent with our MBTA communities bylaw and things like that. This also is part of the recodification process.
Yeah.
And the next step will be to do a second review of the definitions against the table of use regulations to make sure they're all consistent. And some of the definitions in the bylaw currently are with the sections that they pertain to. And some of them are back in the definitions, so we're gonna make all of that consistent. We'll probably move a lot of the definitions out, and that will be the next round.
When you tackle the table of use too. Okay,
It's like a dissertation.
it is. It's a bylaw.
You can, you can make updates forever. I know communities that have special town meetings with zoning amendments year after year after year after year. There's a reason. It's important to keep it a living document, to address needs, to clarify or update. But it's a lot.
Any questions from the board? Jeff? Okay,
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I know that's only.
Excellent
a third of
job.
it tonight, so thank you for the time.
and thank the planning board for sitting through that. I mean, not the planning board, the finance committee for sitting through that. Thank you, Woody, thank you,
Makes
planning
us all
board,
smarter.
planning staff. You're more than happy to sit through the finance part of it, since the finance committee sat through the planning part of it. Okay,
Now that
Tracy,
intermission is over,
Tracy, do you want to, do you want to take a break here? Does anybody want to have a reason to
Sure.
go to the bathroom or excuse yourself? Okay, let's take 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay,
yes,
we're gonna come back
Yeah.
in session.
Back on.
August is back in session.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, look, there he is.
There's Jeff.
He's right
Up
here.
there. Yeah. Okay, so, Tracy, I'm gonna ask Tracy to go through the general government matters, the warrant before the select board and the finance committee, so as she goes through it, if you have any questions, just raise your hand.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, I wanted to talk a little bit about our process, so everyone's aware of it. I know most of you on the FinCom certainly are, but our process is not the school committee's process. We're not the school committee. We have different timelines that we follow. They're an integral part of our process, but we're not them. So November 1st, we begin with capital planning. Some members of the finance committee have sat on that team before. That's when all of the department managers are required to submit to me any capital requests that they have for the next budget cycle. That goes on, it starts in November, and that's ongoing usually through March. In December, I conduct budget hearings with the department managers, so I require that they submit to me what they need for their budgets each and every year. I meet with some of them don't submit any changes, so I don't need to meet with them, but that happens throughout the month of December and into January. January, I start putting together this warrant. It doesn't just happen with what we're talking about in the budget cycle. There are things appearing on there that we've been talking about for years. You know, the board will say, hey, this is something we have to update. The planning board will look at their zoning bylaws. So that's the culmination of a lot of meetings and a lot of conversations that are occurring over a period of time. Concurrently, in December, the schools, the regional school districts are all starting their budget process. They're working, preliminary numbers are being issued, understanding that I probably won't get the school committee's final amounts. Well, I think they're voting tomorrow night, if I'm not mistaken, but they have through mid-March to provide us with their final amounts. Understanding that their budget, the educational component of our operating budget is more than 50% usually, or around 50%. for me to put out preliminary budget data, it just wouldn't be useful to anyone without having those numbers in there. So until we get that, we prepare all the different pieces, but until those numbers go in, we really don't have a budget. So generally speaking, around the end of March, you get that big budget document that has all of the specific information relative to all the department heads, our capital plan, all that information. That kind of comes the end of March, beginning of April, and then we have the whole month of April up until town meeting to deliberate on those issues. So that's what's happening now.
Good times.
Yes. So jumping right into the warrant, Article 1, most of these you're gonna be very familiar with. We see them each year. That's a listing of what you're gonna see at polls, the positions that are open. And this year, you'll also see a proposal for a general override. At this point in time, consideration will be given for approximately $500,000. Again, we don't have any of the final numbers, so it will likely be changing or could likely possibly be changing depending on what happens with Triton, Essex Tech, and Leader. So once we get those numbers, we'll have a clearer picture there. Article 2 is the reports of the boards and committees. No action needs to be taken there. And Article 3 lists the salaries of our elected officials in the community. Article 4 is our operating budget, and that's our annual operating budget that we seek approval for. There are numbers in there, again, those are representative of the numbers that you see in there are based on requests. Not all requests were funded this year, not because they didn't lack merit, but we just have finite resources and we don't have the ability to support all of them.
Tracy, one
Yes.
question on this, so the total budget
Here, the number in here right now is $25,435,990. Does that include if the $500,000 is passes at the poll? Or is that in,
You're gonna see that as a special article.
a special article, okay, so this is what our budget would look like.
Yeah.
Without, okay,
Without that.
without that, okay, good,
Right.
thank you.
Let's see, Article 5 is, we see this every year, it's requesting an appropriation to be deposited into our stabilization fund. As you know, our stabilization fund funds the majority of our capital planning initiatives along with free cash and any other available funds that we have. This year, we try to make a commitment, we try to put a couple $100,000 into that fund every year. It's questionable whether we'll have, it's certain we won't have 200,000, it's questionable whether we'll have any money to put into that fund. That's something, we try to make a commitment to do, but again, this year, is not a good year in terms of having any excess levy capacity.
Putting monies into a fund, are we hopeful that we will have some kind of dollars to put into the municipality, the fund, instead of calling it the town hall fund?
Oh, no, I don't expect there's no article in here to put any money into that account. No.
So, Article 5 is
We're all eating
That
pasta here.
$200,000 right now is a placeholder number. If at town meeting, if the way the budget works out after Triton, Whittier, Essex, the education components and everything else come back, I know you're probably still waiting on some insurance numbers and all those other things that don't come in. If we are not going to have this, that we would either, this amount that is said and voted on at town meeting may be 50,000, it may be 100,000, it may be move no action on this article.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
okay.
Yep.
Tracy, this money comes out of free cash? Is that where it comes from?
No, it would come from raise and appropriate, so it would come from the tax rate.
It come from the taxes. Thank you.
And right now, we have a balance in the fund before any action is taken of approximately $330,000, maybe a little more or less for interest earnings. But the proposal that you have in front of you with the articles that are being presented in this warrant, we expect to spend some of that so that we would, again, if town meeting approved it, we'd end up with a balance of only about $80,000 left in our stabilization.
What's the percentage on the interest earnings right now?
I don't know what the treasurer is getting currently, but I can find that out for you.
Tracy,
Yes,
what's an example of a drawdown for the recreation revolving fund? Sorry.
that's okay. So the recreation revolving fund, those fees come from the field rentals.
Yeah.
So the independent agencies that use our fields pay us, and the money is drawn down for field maintenance.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So it's-
That's,
And DPW still does all the.
DPW does it, but it's, we have maintenance programs too that are outside of the DPW. They do the mowing, they have a company that does the, what do you call it, the watering system?
The sprinkler system.
The sprinkler
Irrigation.
system,
Irrigation,
that's
yeah.
the word, right? The irrigation system and things like that.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Of course, you can bring in a lot of civic duty from the, like Triton and stuff like that, that they can help out with a lot of that kind of, that they have to earn credits for.
To do what?
We have not
To,
taken advantage of that
to
in
maintain
the past.
fields and you know, keep the building clean and things of that nature.
I'm sure if Triton students wanted to volunteer for their community service credits, we could absolutely put them to work.
Yeah, I think as far as curriculum is concerned, that they're required to earn a
I
certain
don't
amount
think
of.
they are. National Honor Society is, but not.
Yeah, not regular
It's not a
students.
graduation requirement, it's not a course requirement. It's not, it
And you can
is-
get scouting in, but
But
I think
that's-
we've lost our scouting here in
No,
town.
but that's not a, I just wanted to spell that
And honestly,
that's, they can't do what we hire
they
in
can't do,
irrigation.
yeah.
No, I'm not talking,
And
I'm
they
not
can't
talking
even
about
mow.
that, I'm just talking
No.
about.
They can't even mow.
No.
They have to be
No,
on a
they-
decking system.
They
and all
have
that.
to, well, they have to be at least 18 years of age, the same as the requirements.
There's probably an insurance liability to
Right,
have kids doing
exactly.
work
That's-
like that with automated equipment, mechanized equipment rather.
What's Article 6, what's the balance in OPEB?
So right now, the
Good man.
OPEB account has, currently we have an unfunded liability of about
I know.
6.7 million. The trust fund balance right now is $1,515,744, so we're not quite there yet.
Are they gonna change that? Is there still pending legislation to change that
It's
mandate?
always pending legislation to change it, but I wouldn't hold my breath on that.
Yeah.
Still
Okay.
only one or two towns that have to.
Right, right.
Do you know how we compare in terms of our deficit of OPEB compared to other towns? in relation to revenues?
I believe there are only a handful of towns that have met
Yeah.
their requirement, I think there's 3 or 4. And this is,
We're roughly, what, 25% of your revenue?
Right,
Deficit.
right.
Is that the going rate for,
I don't think there is a going rate. I
Yeah.
think we've committed to putting it on here every year and trying to fund it as much as we can because we want it in front of the voters. We want the residents to understand that there is this unfunded liability out there and we don't want it to be forgotten. It's always reported in our financial statements when we have our annual audits and things like that, but it's there and we're trying to consciously address it a little bit at a time, but we also have Triton's outstanding liability as well, which is we own, as one of the member communities, so
It sneaks up on.
it does.
Cause you have, as soon as you start having retirements, significant,
It-
highly paid.
Aging community, the retirement,
It's your,
the retirement has increased
Retired two or three
dramatically.
high paid
Positions,
officers or
Yeah, I
somebody,
mean,
it's,
there's more people that are just stepping
it
out
blows up.
because they're aging out.
So Article 7 is familiar, again, we see this every year. That's how we fund our PEG programming. What's a little bit different this year, you're gonna see, is there's two, later on in the warrant, there's a proposal that was on the warrant last year as well, asking to repeal PEG. So should the PEG get should the accounting for PEG be repealed, so we no longer hold it in a special revenue fund only for that purpose, which is an accumulating balance, which right now has a little over $1.1 million sitting in that fund, it would become a line item of our operating budget. The money that's available in this fund now, I know we've talked about it, the FinCom, and in the past, we would hopefully want to commit that to use to defray the increasing education costs. It's not gonna go far, but it would be a funding source for a couple of years to help us out, so.
But you're always gonna get pushback on the PEG fund because there are too many people out there that are committed to the idea that it's for PEG purposes only. And it comes out of our Comcast bill. that
Correct.
It's our own personal money, so that I think a lot of people look at it and say, but, you know, that's not what I committed to.
So actually, it's not the residents that commit to it, the Department of Revenue, there's two legal avenues that you can account for this.
Okay.
And I will tell you, I was responsible for putting it in, proposing the special revenue fund, because at the time, we were just starting our PEG programming, and we thought we were gonna have a new town hall, and we were gonna build a whole studio in there, and those costs were gonna go directly to fund that. So it made sense that we would hold this money in a separate special revenue fund. That hasn't happened, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So you can either put it in a special revenue fund, and we had to get town meetings approval to allow us to put it there, or it can become a general revenue, which can be used for any legal municipal purpose. PEG won't go away, the same programming that you're enjoying now is going to stay, it's just funded through the general fund rather than the special revenue fund. And any excess beyond what it costs to run PEG, rather than building up in this account with really no intended purpose right now, can be used to defray, education costs or other budgetary expenditures.
Yeah, I do not see how we could spend 1.1 million under the rules of PEG today. We can't spend that money because we can't come up with enough uses for it.
Oh, I
And
can see it.
we'd be making up uses for it
it's.
legally under the PEG.
Yeah.
Legally under the PEG. That's why
Right,
we
you know.
need the later things is to change it so that it is accessible,
Right,
because it's.
but to take the idea away from what initially it was set up for, I think puts a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth because they don't understand. You just gave a really great explanation on all of that.
What was it initially set up for this?
PEG money,
Yeah.
there's money that we pay out of our
Right.
Comcast bill
What was the initial, what was the
to
original
support
intent of
PEG.
Right, but what,
It's a mass state law, the original, the fund that we have right now is
What?
defined by mass
when we
state law.
say what the parameters of PEG are, what I'm asking is, what are those parameters?
Programming, education, and government.
Programming, education, government.
So all of that was how it was described to me was to keep it going and keep it up to date as far as, you know, how technology is working. And, I mean, we could, I mean, $1 million is like no money at all. You could blow through that.
The reason I ask that is because the common refrain that I always seem to hear from rebuttalists, for lack of a better term, is that money was intended for the kids. That money was intended for schools, it was intended for the kids. And right now, it's been dead capital for a really long time. And if we, as opposed to having to potentially float an override to pay for schools, I guess I don't see where the rebuttal would hold up.
Well, that's not really true though.
No, the rebuttal.
Your definition of PEG, just for kids, is.
That's not my definition, that's the one that's
not
If
true.
we could give it to the kids today.
Because no, but, I mean, if you read what the law says about where this money can be spent,
PEG specific?
it's PEG specific
Okay.
by the law.
Yeah.
We could practically build a new building to put a media center in so that the entire public can come in and create their own ads, they can do their own,
So PEG was designated for a media center?
Anyone can do that today with their own phone. We don't need to spend $1 million.
No, but what I'm saying though, that's what the
See, this is
definition is.
individual,
No.
it's not regulated.
Yeah.
We can
No.
do whatever we want
What the
with
point,
it.
I think what Tracy is alluding to is,
Yeah, just,
it's the accounting.
so, yeah, it's, if I'm not putting words in your mouth, Jada, so correct me if I'm
That's
not
okay.
consistent with what you're saying. So there are two avenues. It is legal to do either. You can
Correct.
either account for it in the special revenue fund, which we voted at town meeting and we've been depositing the money in there. Then there is a list of legal allowable expenditures that you can spend it on. We cannot give it to Triton.
We cannot, right.
cannot use it for
Because of the way it's
a DPW dump
held.
truck. We
Right.
can't use it for anything except that. If you repeal it and the special revenue fund, the accounting, and you just have it deposited into the general fund, then you have more flexibility.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, look what Salisbury has done.
For any
You need to know what Salisbury has done with their SVT or whatever the acronym is they use it for. They got a truck and a trailer with satellite antennas on it. They have a radio station.
So-
I mean, when you start talking
I guess-
about what.
But that's why I'm asking about the specifics of PEG, because and I'm not, this is a, for lack of a better term, call it a knee-jerk reaction, right? We don't have the luxury of those things, even if we say, well, the PEG money's right there. We're looking
You have
at
secrets going on.
significant shortfalls in education-related expenses that we're facing,
Well-
and we're looking down that barrel, and you say to yourself.
We're gonna get to that.
No, I know, but do you,
Right.
I guess, at a high level, do you go out and say, well, I'm willing to borrow money to address those needs, or I'm willing to float the idea of borrowing money at X interest rate to address those needs, or can I put debt capital to work?
We haven't got there yet.
That's a housekeeping item, but that's why I asked about the specifics
Sure.
of PEG.
So when we get to that article, I was part of the PEG committee and I
Yep.
was there at the beginning. I can go back and historically what the intent was and
Right.
how we ended up where we're at.
Tracy, what is our receipts, new money coming in from PEG, has it gone up or down over the last few years?
You know, and initially about, 3 or 4 years when the streaming kind of first came out, it started to decline, but we thought the revenues would just go down to
Okay.
nothing, but they haven't.
No,
We're
because
still
what's
getting-
happened is that they've built streaming into the regular programming.
Right.
And so without realizing it, we're paying for it in a different way.
Yeah, we get anywhere between 30 and 40,000 a quarter.
So 30, so we're 120 to 160. So at the rate of spending it at 65, we're building up
twice as much each year in money that we are taking in that we don't, that's sitting.
That's growing, right?
That's growing while our education bills are growing as well, but we can't cut under the way we currently have it set up in our town legally. We cannot ever tap into that other than for the required uses, and that doesn't include funding
Until,
until, right, and we would want to, if we were to do anything like that, we would wanna make sure that if we bought capital with this, say a van, to have a mobile TV unit, we would need to make sure that we could run it on an operating budget of less than $100,000 a year to support it going forward, for it to then be self-sustaining.
correct,
Like the ambulance fund.
Right.
It has to be able to be self-sustaining going forward. So that sort of investment doesn't come without a long-term financial revenue stream in.
It's a question of priorities.
right.
Where do you want the funds to go?
Correct.
Do you wanna do it?
It-
Yeah, it's priority,
in,
simple.
you know, in the towns, the townspeople are gonna have to make a decision.
That's right, but it's still.
That's why we bring it to town meeting. Okay, so Article 8,
Article 8, again, we see this every year, that's our revolving funds, that's just how we account for those. They're user funds, user fees that come in and they fund the operation, but it requires an annual appropriation. So both the recreation revolving fund and the municipal waterways improvement and maintenance fund, which is the harbor master's account, function in that same manner. Let's see, the next is the ambulance enterprise fund. We see this every year, it's the cost of doing business, still
Self-sustaining.
self-sustaining, they certified free cash is about $272,000 this year.
272, did you say?
Yes.
And that's money that then, when needed for new ambulance, new things.
For like Article 10.
Under Article 10, that's where that free
Article
cash
10.
comes, there we go.
Last year, you may recall, was you authorized a lease to allow them purchase the new ambulance. This would be the second year payment of that lease, which would come from their ambulance enterprise free cash.
What is the lease term?
I believe it's 5 years. I believe it's a 5-year term.
And at what percentage is,
I don't recall off the top of my head. I have it in my office, so I'll let you know.
I'm being such.
So this is the,
Pain in the ass,
this is
but
the second year payment of the one we've already authorized.
Correct.
Is that what you said? Okay,
Correct.
thanks.
well, we authorized it
We
last
authorized the
year
first-
at town meeting.
Last year.
Right. There's,
So it's a 5-year lease, let me just ask you this then, what's the longevity of a leased vehicle?
An ambulance?
Yeah,
I think the last one was a 2000, the one we took out of service for this lease was a 2003.
okay, so we're getting at least
wow, that's a long
more
time.
than 10 years out of it. Yeah, okay, well, that's reasonable then.
Tracy, do you know how much money the enterprise has in their trust that they've saved?
Yeah, they have 272,540.
I'm sorry, did you say that already?
Yes,
Yep.
that's the free cash.
Yep,
272 what?
542.
542. Thank you.
The next article is our free cash consent article. We talked a little bit about capital planning. These are articles that would be before the capital planning committee. You've probably heard of some of them because they've been ongoing for a number of years. We're asking for $1.8 million from free cash to fund upgrades to the Morgan Ave Fire Station, a DPW dump truck purchase, the final year of the elementary school roof replacement, and the second phase of the elementary school HVAC replacement.
The second and final phase, right?
Second and final phase, yes.
And Tracy, before this, what's the free cash balance right now?
Right now, our free cash balance is $2,536,375. And just, you know, I guess just a point of interest, when the school roof project came to us initially, it was expected to be about a $1.6 million project. There was consideration given for moving forward with the debt exclusion override. It took us longer, clearly, but the total project cost will end up coming in at $1,063,000. So we're using our cash, but we're also depleting our reserves. So with the pretty significant projects that we've done, the library roof.
Looks great.
Yeah, it looks fantastic, but this project, the HVAC, in other communities, we would most likely be looking at doing debt exclusion overrides, but we have utilized our available reserves to do these. So I anticipate at the end of this town meeting, should these articles be approved, we'll be spending our free cash down to about $500,000. So this is a position that's significantly different than we've experienced over the last 15 years. Revenues are slowing.
It's nationwide though.
It absolutely is, I don't wanna say the R word, but
No,
you know, things are looking significantly different. We knew last year that this was gonna be like this. It's not a surprise to any of us. We saw it coming. But that some of the decisions that we made have, you know, are putting us in this position so that I would be very concerned about, you know, say, going out to a rating agency. By the time we're finished with our 2026 town meeting, we're not gonna look nearly as appealing as we did 5 years ago.
Our rating, in real terms, our bond rating is not going to be a AAA because we have spent down our reserves.
So there are
But
just
you can be.
consequences to our decisions,
Right.
not
Yeah.
good, bad, right, or wrong. These are just
we're
things
not
you
gonna
should
be the
aware
only
of.
ones, so, you
Right.
know,
Right.
we're gonna still be part of the big club.
But we-
No, but it
It'll cost us-
matters.
It'll cost us
Ooh,
more.
it matters to
When
our
we have to borrow
taxpayers.
money, it will cost us more to borrow money.
Correct.
Hats off to you though, because when we first put together that roof plan for the school, I was sure that somewhere along the line, we were gonna have to bribe Peter to pay the ball to meet the annual requirements of the roof and the HVAC and everything else, and we didn't, we were doing
We,
that is a huge accomplishment, I never thought that would happen.
I think we came in under the wire as far as like, the heightened effect of expenditures to do any kind of work like that. We got it done, and if we were just to propose that right now, we wouldn't be able to come in with those kind of numbers.
Very different.
and Frank, you're right, we probably wouldn't have been able to do it if we hadn't had the influx of the ARPA funds, which we were able to use for a lot of our other capital.
Right.
Or we would have had to defer those. So you're right, you're absolutely right.
Can I ask some questions on, are we done with Article 11? I have some questions on Article 11. The fire station upgrades, do we have, I haven't gotten like anybody's request yet that came to you. Is it specified on what those upgrades are gonna be and how long are they gonna take? Is there a plan in place of, okay, so.
That's how we do all the process every year, same thing.
So are we gonna spend the entire 100,000 in fiscal year 2026 for those upgrades?
Yes, correct.
And what are they gonna be?
So, back in, gosh. 2024. Back in 2024, I commissioned a study, DMS Design, Architects and Engineers. They did it for us to look at that building. I think it was resulted from conversations that were had at the select board meeting. And they put together a report, and it has a capital assessment list
of all of the repairs that need to happen and when they need to happen. Obviously, we're not in any position to do all of them at once, or even all of the items that they've identified should be done in 2026. What we plan to do is, the bigger issues are, the asphalt roof shingles, which is about 50 grand, and plumbing, which is about 50 grand. If there's money left over, they're gonna look at gutters, wood trim, wood posts, siding, vinyl siding replacement, overhead doors, windows, and I think that's it for 2026, which is just a small section of the list of things that need to be done.
Right, if, I haven't seen the latest and greatest capital planning plan either. When are we gonna, when is the new fire station gonna come to that?
I've not heard anyone directly
So we're not-
about a new fire station.
So that's not in capital plans at all right now.
The fire chief had talked about the need for a new fire station, but that would have to come from the select board, not capital.
We just don't have the funding for anything like that right now.
Oh,
That would be a debt exclusion override.
Right.
And, you know,
I guess my point is all those upgrades are definitely necessary,
Yes.
because the place isn't even sanitary, really, when you
No,
think
it's
about it. And those are all definitely necessary, but I think there might be a little pushback if we are planning, like, let's say in the next 5 years, we're gonna build a new building, because, I mean, the fire trucks right now, they don't even fit in the building, so I mean, the
That's not
buildings.
true.
They do.
They do fit.
Well,
if you suck your gut in a little bit, you can.
No, they
Yeah, they do, but it's,
no, I know, they're all in the building, I know.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I don't, the building size isn't adequate for a normal fire station,
no.
according to the new equipment. It's,
If you were going to build a new fire station, the specifications would be significantly different from what we have in that area, but it's functioning adequately. Do we have issues with plumbing? Absolutely. They can't take a shower, and if anyone flushes the toilet, gross,
geez.
but it's disgusting. I mean, there's a lot of problems with that facility. But that being said, we're not even in any kind of feasibility study, so you're talking about years out.
right,
And it's kind
So-
of like, just to in comparison, Whittier is talking about a potential new building
right,
at NECO.
At NECO, yeah.
But they still have to address the septic issues
Sure.
that they're dealing with now. I mean, it would be great if we could all say, yeah, we wanna build this new building, but in reality, you're probably 6-7 years away
6-7
from a
years
fire
out
station
before-
if you could even get approval for it.
Right.
I mean, we were gonna be here for 3 years for town hall, and it's now
So
9
the capital
You know what?
plan,
I'm
the
perfectly
capital
happy
plan, the
Yep.
capital plan that we have, that goes through capital planning,
Mhm.
is there a new fire station even identified on that capital plan?
So the fire chief brought it to the capital planning committee and
Mhm.
talked about the need for one. I think we would put it in there just like the town hall is in there.
A new building or
It's-
renovations?
Once again, okay, we've done the math on this, on
Right.
like how many buildings. A renovation on that.
Right.
To bring it to code. Does everybody know the answer? So how's it imagine, is it gonna cost more or less than a new building?
They're probably gonna come in neck and neck with one
No,
another.
they will come in more. The
Yeah.
renovation
For
will
reno?
come in more.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's gonna happen.
exactly.
That's why town hall can't be renovated. It's why the fire station is cost prohibitive to renovate these buildings and get them to code. If
So
we
we-
had a plan for $12 million that would have solved all 3 problems and it didn't pass, and we now are seeing the cumulative impact of not passing that in 2013, 15, 2015. $12 million in 2015, we would have already been halfway through the bond life.
the taxpayer impact was $50 a year on the average
And that's why we keep
taxpayer.
saying that in looking at these things and thinking about multi-use buildings and thinking about how to do things smarter in a way that actually was cost effective, we have now.
So why aren't we thinking about building a new fire station?
Because we can,
We don't have the money.
No, well, hang on a minute, just hang on a minute.
how much do you think the new fire station, just for fun, what do you think it would cost?
I don't know.
$25.6 million.
Dave has said that, you know, it all depends upon what kind of building you build and what he wants and what we need for space. It's not gonna be a Taj Mahal, you know, I mean, I don't know, I don't have any numbers, but what I do know is what you're talking about is you're talking public safety versus a town hall, which really has nothing to do with public safety.
It's not an either or, we need both, is the
We,
thing,
we,
we do need both.
we need both, so
We
which,
probably
so
need
let's
both.
put them in line and figure out which one we're gonna do first.
That,
How does it pertain
to spending $100,000 to make their
$100,000
showers.
in the article, that's what I'm.
Well, because
I'm with you,
my-
don't get me
my-
wrong.
my
But you gotta
question-
keep-
my
you gotta keep
question-
the rain off their
no,
heads,
my
right? It's $50,000 for a roof.
My question started with, how far are we gonna take the renovations, and from what I heard you say, Tracy, is that we're gonna fix everything, and it's gonna be beautiful with new siding, new roof, new trim, new, you know, if let's just say that cost is gonna go up another $150,000 over the next couple of years. You know, if we pump $250,000 into the old fire station, and then it gets put on capital planning that we're gonna build a whole brand new building, I think you're gonna get a lot of kickback from the residents about that. So my point is why don't we give them what they need, make it safe, bring it up to code, and then and then start thinking about building the new fire station.
So we've got $1.5 million worth of repairs identified on here. Respectfully, it has,
The select
you
board.
have to tell me what you want to do. As
That's what I wanna
as
do.
being in charge
Well,
of
you-
facilities, my
you-
job is to keep them all functional, so
Right.
that's what I'm doing here.
Right.
So you've never, actually, I think I've asked you in the past to work, if there's, I know the fire department has been a consideration of yours, to bring something to me. Bring what you wanna do, and
Let's go down,
you've never have, well, right now we can't do it, right now we have to think
Right,
about
let's just press on
$100,000.
what we're doing, but I just wanted to answer your
$100,000
question.
goes
That's
nowhere.
why I'm bringing this up right
Yeah,
now.
I guess what I'm
nowhere.
saying is,
Yeah.
would any of your plans that you're going to share, would any of them get in the way of fixing the roof?
No.
Today, right.
Nope.
So that's where we are, what I'm saying is, I
Right,
think
and I
that's where
agree,
we are
I
right now.
agree.
We gotta put a roof on the place, and we gotta make sure that.
The toilet's
people are
flush.
getting sewage on the
Right,
shower.
absolutely. Okay, can we press on to the next one?
I'm gonna push one more button here. As far as, people looking for, you know, in the community for betterment for their own group. I think it's, and I'm probably gonna come off as like Simon Levy or whatever it is, but the COA has to realize that we don't have the money. And I would love to be able to give them everything that they are encouraging, but there are other things that are, I know that's not on the warrant, but.
I'm gonna say,
No, I know it, but it's just like, can we let them down gently? You know,
I don't know what you're referring to.
I'm referring to the fact that it's money that is looking to be spent, that,
Their operating budget, are you talking about?
no, for new facility.
For the council on aging?
Yeah.
There's no project before us. They're rented downstairs. They're in rented space. We paid for it with ARPA money through.
We're a year and a half out from the lease being up.
Correct.
And
Okay, and
there's nowhere unless they re-up the lease for them to go. But there's nowhere to spend that money.
Spend what money? I'm sorry, Leslie.
They want a new building.
But that's not before us tonight.
I understand that, Alicia. What I'm saying to you
But I
is-
don't wanna talk about something that I have no idea how much they're even proposing.
Oh, boatload.
So we don't know that because it hasn't been proposed. So let's just stick to the articles tonight and try to get through the warrant.
Article 12?
Yep.
I think so.
Well, thank God, Jane.
No, wait a minute, Article 11, you had some more questions on Article 11?
I do, I wanna, just real quick, the dump truck, didn't we just buy them a dump truck?
We replace dump trucks when they become obsolete, so I think either
Was this
one
one
or the
scheduled,
last
was this like a scheduled replacement?
it went a year longer than it was scheduled for.
Okay,
And they're replacing I believe it's a 2009 Freightliner with a plow and a sander that they're replacing this year.
and its shelf life is over,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Richard,
All
you're
right,
on the
next one,
capital
Yeah,
planning,
that's
right?
what we reviewed.
Is that right, 2009? Yeah.
Yeah, it was the old one,
Yeah.
the oldest one.
Okay, and then overall, in general, on Article 11, why are we taking this out of free cash, and why is it not coming out of the municipal building account?
Why would it come out of the municipal building account?
Because these are all capital improvements to our municipal buildings.
So
I brought this up last year with the annual town meeting, when we were gonna, 2 years ago,
Clarify.
we were gonna do 2 million last year, and we were gonna appropriate the entire project. And then that got changed in capital planning from 2 million down to 1 million, so we approved the 1 million last year. When we did that, I brought it up at town meeting, I don't understand why we don't take the entire 2 million out of the municipal building account and fund it completely now. Okay, so my question is we're talking about our bond rating, we're talking about bringing free cash down to in the $500,000 range, and we're talking about if we have to borrow money in the future, it's gonna go up. All right, if, you don't even have to pick all of these, if you just take the HVAC replacement and you pull that $1 million out of the town hall fund account, or you can call it the municipal building account, and you pay for that with that money, then we actually wouldn't need an override.
No, so first of all, I can't pull money out of any account. If town meeting puts it into an account.
No, I'm talking, make it an article, make it a new article.
If the board wants to make it an article and propose it that way, that's fine. You can spend all of that money for another legal municipal purpose. You have to propose it, you have to put it on the warrant, and town meeting has to support it. I can't take the money out of
I know
that
that.
fund because town meeting put it in for that particular.
I'm proposing that right now. That's what I'm
Do you
proposing.
guys, not me.
Well, I suppose you could just, in your spare time, come up with a draft on something like that.
Sure, but it would not negate your need for an override because that's a one-time revenue funding a one-time capital project. That doesn't impact.
Well, I'm gonna bring that up in a minute, but
I'm sure.
So,
well, do you
Town
wanna
meeting-
talk about the school budget right now?
Whatever you wanna do.
go ahead.
Okay, I ran some numbers on the school budget, okay? I have the last 4 years of what we've appropriated right here, okay? And
For the operating budget, the
For
school
the
operating budget?
operating
Triton
budget.
or all of education?
All of it.
what we have listed for education.
Education, okay.
All of education. And if you run those numbers over those 4 years, in 2024, their budget was 12,500,000. In 2020, it was 10,900,000. Okay, that's a $1.6 million difference, okay?
That's not their budget. You're talking about our assessment.
Our assessment, thank you.
Which is very different from their budget.
Our assessment.
Their budget, our portion, yes.
Thank you. Okay, over a 4-year period, that's a 12.8% increase. All right, you can't just divide it by 4 because that comes out to 3.2%. Okay, if you just divide it by 4, you're not taking into account their increases over that 4-year period. If each year you subtract or add what their assessment is to us, they've only gone up in the last 4 years about 3%. Okay? It's right here, I got the numbers right here.
So do I, Dana.
Dana, do you understand how the assessment calculated?
I don't care how it's calculated, I just know, I know what it is.
We had 2-hour-long meetings about how the
Vanessa.
school budget is calculated, especially for Triton. And it's very important that you understand, because they don't willy-nilly assign us how much we're paying, and it's not.
I understand that.
How do they assess how much we pay?
That's not my job. My job is to.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. As an elected official, I will tell you right now, it is your
Listen,
job.
Don't yell at me and don't point your finger at me.
Yeah.
All right, let's not get in a fighting match
Mr.
here.
Packer, as a citizen and a longtime chair of this finance committee, I am disturbed that you don't understand how the Triton funding assessment works. There are multiple meetings to the public
I know.
every year, to parents to need to understand it. To all of us, we are entrusted by the electorate to negotiate and talk to
So
us.
on I.
Yes, I said we are, and the fact that you don't understand that funding formula, like the
No,
back
but
of your hand.
you want me to regurgitate
No, I
that to
just want
you
you
right
to know,
now?
but I
I
want,
can't do that.
I can.
Wait a minute,
Well,
hold
I
on,
know
hold
you
on,
can, I
okay,
hope
hold
so.
on, stop
You're
for a
the chair of the
second.
finance committee.
Stop. Dana, I think what
Back to your
Erica,
corners.
wait a minute, I think what Erica is saying is the way that you're done your mathematical equation is irrelevant to how the funding formula works.
It is, because it's an assessment.
It's not an assessment.
You just told me it was assessment.
No, you're
It's
just,
our education assessment. It includes Whittier, it includes, Essex Aggie, and it includes Triton.
the apportionment of the Whittier budget that is
Can we move on,
allocated.
please? Please, can we move on?
Okay,
We've been here, he can bring that up at your own meeting,
okay.
No, we're gonna come to your meeting.
Try not.
Article 12 represents the total appropriations that will be withdrawn from the stabilization fund proposed for fiscal 2026. It includes firefighter structural gear, a Lucas mechanical chest compression device, and elementary school interior renovations. Again, here with the engineering study that Habib and Associates completed, we're looking at over $1.5 million worth of repairs to our elementary school. What we're gonna start with this year would be some ECT tile,
Good night,
classroom
Steve.
carpet, flooring replacements, and some bathroom renovations.
We need a two,
Or
That would
Is that
absolutely be a multi-year.
a multi-year, there's gonna be more on top, more.
Or, again, if the select board or the FinCom, wanna recommend, we've got these, even with these two buildings we're looking at over $30 million worth of repairs. If you wanna
Right.
entertain
And
that
capital.
exclusion
Yeah.
at some point in time, that could be done,
Right.
or a capital exclusion. Or we just continue paying as you go, a little bit at a time.
Take care of it the same way you take care of your personal life, that's how we can afford to do it.
So Article 13, Newbury was in receipt of some opioid settlement funds in the tune of about $5,900. At the time we received the funds, there was no guidance from the Department of Revenue, the legislature hadn't kind of determined what we were gonna do with these funds, where they would be deposited, so ours was just deposited into the general fund and subsequently became a component of free cash. Since then, there is special legislation that dictates how that money is to be accounted for, so we're gonna ask to take that money out of free cash and put it into an opioid settlement fund. And there are specific rules around what that money can be used for, things like Narcan and police department.
So
would utilize.
that's, Narcan is basically what is being funded, because I guess I'm just not clear on what the opioid funding is.
So, I don't know who, I think it must have been each of the individual states sued a lot of the drug companies and the pharmacies. Purdue Pharma was one of the big ones.
Oh, okay.
And that's where we received. We got a little piece of it. So, it's not gonna make or break us. And then Article 14, we have an unpaid bill, one that slipped through the cracks.
You gotta have one every year.
It's not a trade out. Yeah,
At least we don't need a
City Hall
special
systems.
town meeting to pay it.
Right, right.
Some of them are hilarious though, it's like, you know, $25.63, it's like, what?
You guys finally paid the salt guy?
What's that?
Finally wrote the check to the salt guy?
We finally did.
Kept
We
it
finally
for like
did,
5
yes,
years.
yes, we did,
Salt
yep.
delivery.
So, Article
Change our heart.
15 represents the language, we all understand it's a two-step process. Has to pass the appropriation at town meeting, and then also in the ballot for an override to be approved. So, an override of that magnitude around the $500,000 mark would impact the average property tax in Newbury. So we're looking at a home that's in excess of $800,000, probably around $850,000, $870,000.
So that would be like the median,
Yes,
okay.
yeah, would impact them about $158 a year, just so you have an index. We knew last year that this was coming. There was a large group of people that were petitioning the select board. I think they actually even came to one of our meetings,
They
if I
did.
recall, wanting to move an override forward last year.
Mhm.
We
Oh,
deferred it.
yes,
Yeah, we deferred it to this year, knowing that, this would likely be the year we'd have to entertain it. So that-
they came before us prior to the election.
Yes,
Yes, we had, we received multiple, we received approximately 12 letters received on the topic of supporting Newbury community services, including schools, recreation, library, council on aging, and public safety. They asked the select board and finance committee to support overrides. That was public comment at a meeting on March 5th, 2024.
and just in terms of process, so everyone understands, as one of the members of the regional school, right now, at the level the funding level being considered by the school committee, or if they haven't voted it yet, it is expected that Salisbury would be able to fund their assessment without an override. Rowley is considering an override for $1 million, and we could potentially be considering an override.
Where are we falling into categorizing the top notch and the bottom notch as far as like our percentage is concerned? Because I know we're bringing in a whole bunch of new kindergarten students, which is going to be
I think our numbers are down this year.
They're down this year.
They're down for everybody this year, and our the grant percentages have not changed successfully. The incoming kindergartners is setting us up, the trend is that Newbury will be, over the next few years,
Right.
we will start to see a greater percentage of the Triton population, but that's not impacting the numbers for this year.
Okay.
The numbers for this year, the state funding formula are based on foundation enrollment and minimum local contribution, and then a division between the three.
Right, and so if, it's kind of, we're in this if-then scenario, so if Salisbury passes it, which they likely will because they don't need an override, and Rowley passes the override and Newbury doesn't, then we're going to be looking at making cuts to balance our budget, okay? So we'll need to have an alternative budget ready to go. If it fails in Rowley and it fails in Newbury, then it gets kicked back to Triton to make the adjustments in their
And
budget
then
proposal.
we'll see layoffs and things of that nature in order for them to.
You will either.
Either way,
Either
you'll
way.
see if they already have
See them
cuts.
there, yeah,
Okay.
they're already making some.
No, it's not okay, but I understand.
No, so,
Where
so
do we-
this year's much more difficult than we've seen in the last 15 years, for sure.
We're the first town to vote at town meeting, is that
I
correct?
believe we are.
Our town meeting is first, so we won't know what the other two towns.
I think Salisbury's
It's gonna be
last.
the election that will determine.
Oh,
that.
the election, right, the election will actually be.
Right.
Um,
So,
and it has to pass a majority at both places.
2/3?
no, just.
Majority.
Just a majority.
Simple majority at town meeting, simple majority at
The ballot
at
box.
ballots.
Okay,
And that will cover the Triton, Whittier, Essex.
Correct.
It's our education.
Correct.
It's not, this is
It's
not a
not
Triton,
just
this is
Triton.
not a Triton
No, it's
override, this is an
education.
education override.
And you know, the select board always have the ability to call additional town meetings. So, like, if it passes in Raleigh and passes in Salisbury, and we're looking at making some significant cuts, we can always call another special town meeting and propose a general
Historically
override
speaking,
for whatever.
have the special town meetings been a productive thing for the town, or did
When
they
we
just?
held them,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we had many years where we had always had one.
right?
Used to have one every October.
We used to have one every
Yeah,
October.
because you couldn't pay any unpaid bills without it having a special town meeting.
Right,
Right,
right.
so it's a cost savings if we don't have to run a special town meeting.
Right,
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that if we can be efficient,
I mean, if you run a town meeting, would we into the $10,000+ amount to just run a special
Yeah, I
town
think it's
meeting?
between 6 and 10.
All right, so that's it for the finance piece of it?
Right.
Do they get to leave?
If they like.
Oh, I'm on the finance committee now.
But we have a few more bylaws.
Article 17 is
Yeah.
big, we've already talked about that, unless anyone has anything to add to that one.
Article 17, yeah,
17.
so
Article 17 is the
Yeah, so
repeat of
Article
the-
17, I just wanna say, I've said this last year and I'll say it again this year, I'll explain it to the town meeting members. When the town decided, when Tracy put that money into that special PEG fund, my intent was to try and to grow up like what's happening in Salisbury, an organic PEG programming from the residency, because I think it was good for the community. That never happened. That was
What year was it?
2011. It was a long time ago. And it never happened. And that money has been growing. To change that revenue source to just stagnate in that one thing, it to me is and then to go back to the taxpayer and say, you know, we need a little more money here, but we're just gonna let that grow over there. You know, we need more here. I just don't think it's right.
Well, it's not a tax though either.
No, but it's a funding
it's a
source.
fee.
It's a funding source
Right.
for the town. So the other thing is, I wanna mention
It's a
data.
television programming requirement that is pushed upon the people of the community, and then
The
the
users of the service,
Yeah,
the users of the
Subscribers.
service.
the subscribers of the service then goes and to the municipality.
so again, there are two models. There's the municipal model and there's the 501c3 model. I wanted the 501c3 model. We're set up, we're geared up financially with this special revenue fund to have the 501c3 model. The 501c3 model never grew up. I think, Dana, last year at the town meeting, you said you wanted to give it a chance to
I
have
do.
it grow up. A year has gone by, no, not even any like interest.
But
Nobody
we've
even.
also been stymied as a board that we're not allowed to get involved into these other aspects of the town. You know, we're
What do you
not,
mean?
we can't participate in other boards.
You personally.
Yeah,
Yeah, but no, it's not for us personally, this is for the
but
electorate.
that's how it would begin.
No. Mm-mm. We need,
Your leadership would show the way and bring the people in, and then they would take over the program after that.
well, that's not the way we can do it here.
I know.
So that,
15 years.
it's,
You've
right,
had several years.
right.
usually there's someone somehow wants to grab it and run with it, and it hasn't happened.
I was really
You
hoping,
were.
I was
know.
really
It just
hoping.
doesn't.
It just never happened.
And you know what, it's outlived,
You can do it 15.
it's outlived what it was set up for.
Right, and actually,
Outlived-
there's
we've outlived
potential, Ed Markey's office, potential legislation pending, I don't know what's gonna happen now with the new administration, but he originally had wanted to tax the streaming services to funnel some of that money to PEG programming, because if you think of PBS and you think of those big nonprofits, they're losing monies from that. So that was something that he had wanted to do, but I don't know where that went. I don't think that went anywhere fast.
Well, and it's just they
And the
depend
argument,
on donations and volunteer.
right, so the argument, last town meeting was, you know, this money should go for the kids, this money should go for the kids. So riding that wave, if we put it aside, again, I believe it goes against our financial policies that we don't use one-time sources of funding for our operating budget, which is what this will do. It's a one-time source, but it's a stopgap. But then next year, you still have to make up that revenue stream.
But once it goes into another program, that's that.
No, it goes into the operating, it goes into the general fund. And it'll be a line item in the general
Is it
fund.
in?
And my
About
question
120 to
earlier was just,
160.
I just don't, there's
It's
nothing about our
120.
balance sheet that makes me.
Get you over the hump every year.
So
So it's not one.
No.
We just,
No, I agree with you, Frank.
yeah.
Yeah, 85 runs the program.
Well, that's.
Yeah.
All right, so
I don't
there's
think
a,
anyone said that last year, I don't recall that at town meeting, calling it dead capital, which I think is exactly the right thing.
No,
to do.
yeah.
He did, no, you did.
Yeah, I did,
That,
absolutely.
and you also
We just
brought it
don't
up
have
at,
that
that large DCC meeting that we had over at the Raleigh Fire Station. And you presented a pretty good, discussion on that whole thing, and it made a lot of sense.
and this is a good source of capital to use it that way.
Agreed.
So, are there any more financial?
The only one that has a potential financial impact is the very last article, which is the, I think it's 29, it's for a general
No,
bylaw
we'll go back to
for
it.
short-term rentals, think Airbnb. This is, we could have an opportunity to tax, basically, those rentals, so it could provide a new revenue source for the town. The state already has, I believe, 174 units registered currently in our community, but absent this bylaw, we can't realize any of that income, so this could be another revenue source for us. I believe Steve Mangin was the one that brought
I know,
that
and
to
he's
our
not,
attention.
he's not
Yes,
here.
But he had talked about the meals tax and also the rentals.
Does the finance committee, are they aware of what the meals tax is doing now? I don't
I
know.
know that we have it.
Yeah, it was voted.
Yeah, it's voted and it's actually, I
It's
think
not
it's
like huge dollars,
significant.
but
No, I
it's,
think for what,
it's, what are we up to, like,
It goes right into
Yeah.
the general
Goes
fund.
right into
Yeah.
the general fund.
yeah, and I
that's
mean,
what-
I was surprised when we got the first
So
payment. It was
what's
like
the-
$8,000 in the first
Okay, so
one.
174 units, what's the,
Newburyport's been
what
doing it
would
for
be,
years.
what's the,
So it depends, so what happens is, this bylaw opens the door for the select board to promulgate regulations on the rentals. We could get somewhere between 6 and 9%, and then there's also another opportunity for impact fees, but that would have to be a process, that's a public hearing process, we go through
Okay.
that to identify it, but this is the first step to allow us to move
So-
forward.
What does the state do with those 174 units they have registered right now? How does that
So
impact us?
they collect state tax.
So they're collecting
So-
state, so they're
right.
collecting 5% sales tax
Right.
on every,
Right.
they're not collecting.
6.25.
Yeah,
They're
but they're not collecting anything that resembles,
local,
like innkeeper's tax or
Correct.
anything like that. They're not doing any
Correct.
of that,
And
it's just
correct.
sales tax.
quick question, does anyone know, Newburyport, do they have a? They do.
They do.
They do. So someone renting on Plum Island on the Newbury side is not paying that, and this is
this is a burden that would be paid by people coming to visit, not a burden placed on our homeowners.
Correct.
The rentals on Newberry, Newberry side of Plum Island are up dramatically in the last 3 years. I know, actually on our street 49, two of the homes have turned over and have been turned into rentals that were originally all year round residents for the last 15 years.
Are they
So the money got so big for the price.
Are they short-term rentals?
They're like air,
Airbnb?
yeah.
Oh, gosh,
Airbnb,
yes.
Verbo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, gosh.
Those are the
And
party.
there is also a public safety component.
Right.
So this would, the building inspector would be required to look at these units, make sure they're safe. We'd make sure.
Is that required now from the state, though?
Anything that has
It's
to,
going to
like,
be in the new building code. It isn't
yeah,
today, but.
for any
it
kind
is
of
in the new-
occupancy.
Right.
There is, from what we've heard, oceanfront up there, like right near town line there, $7,500 to $10,000 a week for the month of July.
Wow.
It's,
On the wrong side of the island.
hey, how much are you getting for your place?
Absent commercial.
I don't know, the cat doesn't tell me.
These are just small.
Yeah, it's the only, I mean,
Small opportunities
How
for
many do
additional.
And they're getting,
There's 174.
Oh, you have a number?
There's 107, there's 100, no, it's just 174 units are registered with the state.
Oh,
There are
okay.
likely
So that's,
more than that.
so there's probably likely more that once we
Probably
are,
another 100.
yeah. So, but that's, and that includes, so that's, I remember when Steve brought this as an idea, because it's like, what do we have for regulations on them?
Right.
But this is a really good step forward into something that is a revenue stream in a place where we just do not have a commercial base due to our lack of infrastructure.
Right.
So we're limited, and this is something that's not putting a burden on our current residents and taxpayers. But we would also still, those houses still are residential property, so we get the property tax from it, and then this is an additional tax when they use that to make more income. The town would get a portion.
it would be so appetite-wise appealing to people to look at anything down at the island, to be able to turn it into an Airbnb or a Verbo or and still make a sizable amount of money off of it. And it would bring an enormous amount of money into the community. And just, the small businesses and things of that nature that are down there.
so Tracy, I do have another question about Article 19 and 20. Do those have any financial impact against us? The veterans?
The veterans will have a small impact, but not significant. That'll be covered by our, by the money we use to pay for our tax abatements and exemptions, so I don't anticipate that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I can actually add a little bit to that, because Steve has gone through courses. And so our kickback on 115 has gone up to 75% replenishment versus I think it was at the 55% range or whatever. But because of the training that he's gone through, our kickback from the state or the federal, I don't even know who gives it to us, has gone up to 75%.
The reimbursement.
The reimbursement.
Reimbursement, not a kickback.
Yeah, right,
Kickback is
the
not-
reimbursement.
Is not a good term. Okay, let's not use that in finance.
We can calculate the impact and include it in the rationale.
Okay, that'd be perfect. The rationale is really helpful.
Anything that can come back to the veterans is a good thing.
All right, so then the other bylaws that we wanted to, we have here that we're proposing is Article 16. The town currently has a bylaw
How
that.
many articles are there? Louise?
29?
Jesus.
So Article 16 is the, it corrects a conflicting bylaw. In 2008, we passed the act that designated our form of government, the Town Administrators Act. And then for some reason, in 2009, there was a bylaw passed that set, I don't know, what did it set them, what did it?
It set a minimum, a procurement amount of 25,000, we spoke about it at the last select board meeting, I think. So that every contract over 25,000 would need to be brought before the select board.
And
Your
that's,
agenda would be very long.
well, not only would our
I think we went back and
agendas,
forth, was it
but-
25 or 35?
but not
Yeah.
only would our agendas
Yeah.
be very long, we don't understand procurement and all that other stuff. So this really should not, and the town administrator is our chief procurement officer. So we need to repeal that bylaw and just let it sit the way it sits now. So that's what Article 16 does. Article 17 is the PEG. Article 18, this is the resource, the town now has a regional animal control officer. We regionalized it. Last year, she had brought this is trying to, I guess, level out all the communities that she serves to make it easier for her to have one bylaw. One community does not, Newbury is not like Topsfield, let's put it that way. Newbury is not like Oxford, not like Ipswich. So there was one line in here that I asked to be removed. Leslie actually picked up on it last year, because they wanted to effectively leash all dogs.
All male dogs that were intact.
Yeah, or female dogs that are intact as well, that could be in heat, have them leashed. And we have hunters, we have hunting grounds, we have Martin Burns.
We have breeders.
It's not, it was an effective leash law for that, so I asked that be removed. And it has been. So that is gonna be not part of Newbury, but everything else in here, I think, is there anything substantive in this?
So 18 just eliminates the leash requirement.
We don't have a leash requirement.
This
The
is
proposed bylaw change had a asking all
I remember that.
I asked that to be removed, so that's not coming before the town.
Okay.
But everything else that she requested is in here. That just updates our animal control officer.
It must be a daunting job though for one person.
The animal control officer?
Yeah.
So Article 19 and Article 20 are the veterans. Article 21 starts the planning board, and I believe that's everything, right? So it's 10:15 at night. I thank you all for your time being here.
Well, I know if Jeff would-
The finance committee meeting.
Motion. Second.
All those in favor? Patrick, Erica?
Motion to adjourn the select board?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, they're adjourned. I have a motion to adjourn the select board.
Second.
I need a roll call vote. Leslie Matthews?
Yes.
Alicia Greco, yes?
Bill DeMayo, yes.
Dana Bagger, yes.
Jeff Walker? Thank you. Adjourned.